Women magazines seem to open doors to a special, even secret, and feminized world in which the state of being a girl or a woman is celebrated. Pleasure is offered and shared. Women's magazines have a long history, in contrast with the lack of any kind of equivalent magazine for males. Having magazines that are read predominantly by males is not the same as having a men's magazine. Nor do the British lads' mags of the 1990s really fit this definition. Men's world is the world. It needs no further explanation or definition. But the woman's world is defined in relation to this naturally dominant model. Women's magazines have helped a process of demarcation and distinction, the working of difference. This contrast is underlined by the range of magazines for women, by their long history, and by the selection in terms of the age of the audience. The market recognizes and defines their female readers from the age of 12 upwards. Before that, even, there are comics doing the work of socialization, defining what is to be a female and what is a female place in the world. Women's magazines assume that women exist as a coherent readership. They construct women as a largely homogeneous group. They address them as if they are a naturally occurring group. Women's magazines represent women to themselves in certain ways, bringing together social interaction and consumption. They incorporate assumptions about women in terms of their biology, their career, their role models, their emotional lives. They can be sexist by sleath, ideological in what they do not say, and sometimes racist and ageist by implication. They naturalize and so endorse heterosexuality, definitions of sexuality as being normal. Apart from looking at these magazines as gender text and as vehicles for representations, there needs to be paid some attention to their narratives. In a larger sense, they tell a story about becoming and being a woman. In particular sense, they contain narratives in features or readers, letters or short stories, which incline to certain concerns and certain outcomes. This is what McCracken refers to as the ostensibly authoritative grand narrative of the reality developed month after month. Genre features. Women's magazines have consistency of type of content and treatment across their subdivisions and even across a long period of time. This consistency both creates a certain kind of relationship with the reader based on expectations, and it imposes a certain kind of understanding or interpretation of the text. This consistency and continuity also stands for kinds of ideological variety about women's place in a constructed order of things. These magazines both stand for and help maintain the construction to varying degrees. The features that we anticipate that have become conventional focus on appearance, domestic work, relationships, and romance. These may be couched in various modes, for instance, letters, features, fiction, true short stories, advertisements, and ad features. They may be framed by various narrative devices. They may have a varying emphasis from age group to age group. So magazines for young women are strong on forming relationships, on sex information, on layer adventure. Those for older women place more weight on maintaining relationships, dealing with loss, operating in the domestic sphere, among other topics. They use a repetitive format and a confined range of subjects to please a majority audience and to satisfy the economic interest of the advertiser. Representations. The very phrase women's magazines incorporates an assumption about the coherence of a group of people labeled women who can represent it collectively, spoken for as a recognizable group. This coherence shuts down, if not actually eliminates, the possibility of variation in conceptualizing categories of women and their different needs and interests. It is a coherence that both informs the representations and is manufactured by them. It is a coherence that has been manufactured by decades of publications holding on to and constructing an audience. These representations of women may in part be inspired by cultural assumptions and attitudes. Stereotypes are never simply invented by the media. But it is also in a part a creature of market forces. Familiar and understood representations invoking familiar sets of values help sell magazines. One also notices, speaking of women's magazine in general and in terms of circular figures, that some women are not representative. Those who look old are largely absent. Those who do not fit implied definitions of attractiveness are absent. Those who belong to minorities, such as disabled or ethnic groups, are largely absent, as indeed are those belonging to sexual minorities, such as gays or transgenders group. So the representations which are purported to speak to and about all women actually do not. And in so far as they do not speak about women, they're extremely partial. Narrative strategies. To some extent, the devices used in these magazines to narrate a story about womanness may be conflated with what has been said under mode of address. The narration is also about positioning the reader. But in this case, we will talk about two areas. One is narration within the generic parts of a magazine. The other is about narration in the larger sense of discourse and meaning, the story that is told through the magazines in journal. The story of what it is to be a female and to behave as women depends upon consumption. Many of the pleasures that are promised to be an object of affection and approval depend upon consumption. Many commodities are to do with the body, skin, endowment, tactile experiences, but they may also be to do with manufacturing a female environment. Very possible in the women's space of bedroom and kitchen, but not always. There is also the performance of being a woman in public spaces, perhaps other places given over to bodily pleasures such as the restaurant or the gym. In any event, the story that something has to be bought. It is a never-ending story because the narrative can never be resolved. It is about living. It is about aging. It is about the arrival and departure of others in one's life in the story. Then there is a double narrative strategy, in which the reading experience offers one level of narrative pleasure. But on another level, the reader has to reenact the narrative in the public sphere by purchasing goods and services. The story is never ending because the commodity resolutions can only offer temporary pleasures. What she does not point out is that there are problems in the stories underlying the pleasures and which themselves can only be resolved through commodities. The problems are themselves ideological constructions. One's appearance or aging, or one's kitchen or one's state of health, or even one's relationship are not a problem unless one believes they are. So the narratives of women's magazines are as much about raising problems as resolving them, as much about making pleasure a problem that requires further action as of a being an end in itself. Roles. In terms of models for social performance and cultural positioning, women's magazines offer the readers a suite of roles to occupy. These roles are part of the representations. We've already pointed to the place of role in terms of reader positioning, the female reader as confident, but it is to the social models that help to define a woman's place in the ideological order of things. Dominant models in the history of women's magazines are the roles of wife and mother. The woman is seen as a nurturer and carer of children and of men. She is a manager and a purchaser within the domestic sphere. Social interactions. Similarly, the interactions represented in women's magazine are circumcised, obviously with relation to roles. Interactions are referred to within the home, in leisure situations, in relation to children and loved males, in relation to friends, in relation to professionals who are helping them with health issues chiefly, and then possibly with matters such as divorce. They may be expressed in terms of how the woman is regarded by others. They have a lot to do with the woman achieving the approval of others and in terms of her own self-esteem. Contradictions. There are a number of contradictions in the magazines. There is the contradiction which exercise critical work on women's magazine. They purport to speak for the needs and situation of women, yet their connotations work against the interest of women. There is the contradiction that, generally speaking, they articulate opposing discourses of male and female, yet appear to speak of cohesion and harmony and satisfactory relationships. This is not a world in which men and women appear on equal terms. Yet the magazines will refer to equal opportunities and the status of women. It is a world of conflicting appearance and reality. There is a contradiction in that the reader is identified as a woman but is addressed as if she is still learning to be a woman. So it is not yet in the fact the woman identified. There are wider contradictions between elements of magazines which talk up stable relationships and the domestic sphere, and those which allude to sexual autonomy and erotic affairs. In this respect, the very nature of the romantic genre is in itself contradictory. Immediate gratification vies with deferred pleasures. There is a contradiction between the appearance of entertainment in domestic activities and the reality of routine domestic labor. There is a contradiction between the largely middle class labor represented and the actuality of repetitive part time jobs, which is the real experience of many women. There is a contradiction in a way that beauty or appearance is framed in terms of the natural when in fact it is a constructed an artifice. There is a contradiction between the representation of home as a place of leisure and the fact that it is actually a location of labor. And there is the oldest contradiction of all, in which women are simultaneously sexual and on display, yet also represented as being loyal. Leisure and a woman's space. Discussion of text and reader in this case has to take account of the huge sales figures for and the well-evidenced pleasures gained from reading these magazines. One cannot talk simply in terms of hegemony at work, of women as a mass being hoodwinked by the machines of capitalist institutions. Clearly, women's magazines do, after all the critiques are made, offer kinds of reward and satisfaction in the reading. Whatever the forces that create the particular social environment for women, their magazines do deal with that environment. The process of reading offers a leisure space. The structure of the women's magazines offers a chance to divine into the pool for a quick dip. The process of reading is undemanding and it offers a chance to engage with material that women have already learned is part of their province. So there is the pleasure of entering a social space, a special place, and is integrated with female's identity that gives one distinction and satisfaction that somehow sets one apart.